Good morning and welcome to Stock Market Math. Today, we're going to take a look at everything you need to know before the market opens on June 3rd, 2024. For those of you who've watched one of my videos before, you'll notice that I've extended the time a little bit as I'm trying to add new content. So, get yourself a cup of coffee and let's get started by looking to see what happened last week. Taking a look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, we can see on Friday we had a little bit of steady growth until about 3:30 when it popped up. Taking a look at the 5-day, it looked like we were in for a pretty poor week, and we indeed ended up closing down 430 points. But if it hadn't been for that rally on Friday, it could have been much worse. Looking at the S&P 500, we had a fairly neutral, slightly negative day for most of the day, and then again at 3:30, it kind of popped right up, giving us a neutral week. Looking at the NASDAQ, we can see very similar story in that it was down a little bit, it recovered to end up closing on Friday at almost no change. And if we look at the 5-day, we can see that it was down a little bit, 73 points, but not bad for the week. This week's earnings calls are pretty sparse with only 5 of the S&P 500 companies reporting earnings. Monday and Friday will have no earnings calls. Tuesday we'll have 2 companies, which are Bath & Body Works Incorporated and Hewlett-Packard. Wednesday, we'll have 3 companies, Dollar Tree, Lululemon, and Campbell's Soup. And Thursday, we'll end the week with 1 company, J.P. Smuckers. This week in dividend news, we have 44 companies paying out dividends, including Penske Automotive Group will be paying a dividend of 96 cents per share on June 4th, giving them a dividend yield of 2.61%. If we take a look at the dividend history, we can see that back during COVID, they had a couple of quarters where they had to stop paying a dividend, which gave them a pretty poor consistency grade. However, if we take a step back in the timeline, we can see that starting in 2011, they started paying a dividend, and that dividend has been consistently growing ever since then, particularly in the last couple of years. In fact, their 5-year dividend growth rate is an astounding 17.36%. And that dividend is safe with a payout ratio of less than 16. The Southern Company will be paying a dividend of 72 cents per share on June 6th, giving them a dividend yield of 3.73%. Their 5-year growth rate is not very impressive at 3.11. However, they have been growing the dividend for 22 consecutive years. I'd like to point out that if we take a look at their 3-year yield on cost, which means if you'd have bought the company 3 years ago, you would be receiving a dividend rate of 4.41%, which is 22% higher than the sector average. If you would have bought shares 5 years ago, your dividend yield on cost would be 5.33%, which is 45% higher than the sector average. Parker Hannifin Corporation will be paying a dividend of $1.63 on June 7th, giving them a dividend yield of 1.25%. They have a pretty respectable 5-year growth rate at almost 14, and they've been growing the dividend for 7 consecutive years. However, what is really impressive about this company is if we look at the number of years of consistent dividend payment, they've been paying a dividend for 67 consecutive years, which is longer than most of us have been alive. Taking a look at the Fear versus Greed Index, we can see that we have a score of 48, which is very similar to what it was last week with a score of 51, so not a whole lot of change. I do want to show you that this Fear versus Greed Index is calculated based on 7 indicators, and I'm going to scroll down so you can take a look at what they are and how they're calculated. So if you want to see this, feel free to pause and take a look for yourself. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos next week. Have a good day, and remember, keep investing.